because who said it was okay to just crawl around in tiny caves? Okay, hi, welcome back to my podcast. My name's Ray, if you didn't know that already. Although I'm surprised you're here if you don't know who I am. If you don't know who I am, that sounds really conceited. That's not what I meant. Anyway, I'm trying something new this time. And the new thing I'm trying is that I've got like notes written out. I've got a bit of an outline. Because I feel like first time around, it was just whatever came to my mind. And I think that's cool. I think it's fun, right? But I feel like it gets a little lost in the sauce, maybe. And so this time I did decide to have a little bit of an outline. So this is going to go through some sections. Also, can you hear my dishwasher running? Waiting for confirmation, yes or no. Okay. Anyway, so I do have an outline of everything I would like to cover tonight. I would like to keep it under 40 minutes, but I have some strong opinions on some of the things I'm going to talk about. So maybe if I get into the mood, this will be a little bit longer. I guess we'll find out. Okay. First things first, it's a little late in the month of November, but I would like to start off the book of the month. Mostly because I just finished reading the book that I read for October, and I started a new book, so I may as well just let you guys know what I'm reading. Okay, so here's what I read in October, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I am not a Spanish speaker. Okay, and while I did ask how to pronounce these words, I am very white, so I'm so sorry. Anyway, so last month I read a book called Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas? I don't know. I forgot how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. But this was a fun take. This is, as the title might suggest, a vampire novel. But it's also like historical fiction, and a lot of like the relevant facts and stuff that you learn about the time period are accurate, which is really cool. And even in the back of the book, the author talks about how like she was studying at university and like she's done like a lot of research. Like she's very intelligent, very smart, very, very educated on the historical time period. Okay. So it's primarily about a young woman in Mexico in the 1840s, specifically during the Mexican-American War, and it chronicles like this idea of vampires being used as weapons, which is pretty cool. Spoiler alert, I suppose. And the vampires are they're not like Edward Cullen vampires. They're more like my idea of a cool vampire, which is like a monster, like a genuine thing you should be afraid of monster, not a thing you're trying to fuck kind of monster. Although two things can be true, I suppose, not to yuck your yum. Anyway, so more monstrous, less Edward Cullen, very cool concept. It is a love story, which is not what drew me in initially, but I wasn't mad at it. I don't read romance books, primarily like books that are just romance. But if there's an element of romance to them, I'm chill with that. I'm cool with that. So yeah, the love story was not the main like takeaway, but it was cool. It added to the story, I think. And she, like, the main character, like, finds her independence in like her own way. And that's pretty cool. Like, I don't know. I don't want to give too much away about it, but it's a very interesting read, especially if you're into history. If you like a historical novel that has vampires in it, this is probably the one for you. It was really good. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So it was pretty good. Overall, I really liked it. My only complaint is that I feel like with the writing, sometimes it was really rushed. Like the story was really rushed, and sometimes it just dragged. Like certain parts of the story just like dragged. But I guess you could argue that that's not a bad thing necessarily, because it really puts you into what their experience would have been like. Like the actual war part felt rushed, but day-to-day life dragged, if that makes sense. So it's very realistic in that way. That's not like a complaint necessarily about their version of storytelling. It was just hard for me to read because I have a terrible attention span. So I give it 4 out of 5 stars for readability. That's it. So that's what I read in October. Okay, remember, I'm reading a book a month. I'm going to share with you what I read last month and what I'm reading this month. So for November, I'm reading 2 books. I know, that's crazy, but I am. I'm reading 2 books together. Not together, but at the same time, I guess. And the first one is called The Auctioneer by Joan Samson. This one piqued my interest for a very specific reason. Because it's a horror book from the 70s. I had never heard of it. I like a horror book. Again, never heard of this one. But the newest edition of this book, the foreword is written by Grady Hendrix, which is my favorite horror author. So I was like, oh, well, if it's endorsed by Grady Hendrix, like, I gotta see what's up. And not only do I not want to give too much away about this book, but I can't really give you that much information about it because the description of the book is very vague. Like here's what you're going to be, like the plot, like when it's like, here's like the general plot, so you know what you're going to read. Very vague. Okay, so like I'm going to give you the best I can, but it's not a lot to go off of. So you just kind of have to trust that it has an eerie vibe to it and something shady and sinister is going on. Okay, so here's what's happening in the book. It's a small town. It's a very quaint, quiet New Hampshire town. And this guy moves in who is an auctioneer from the city. And he's like, let's start doing auctions to raise money for the town. And it becomes a big deal. And a lot of the residents of the town are like, asked to donate their stuff to the auction and for it to be sold off to make money for the fire department or the police station or whatever it is to better the town, right? And it's very unassuming. Like, that's very like, oh, whatever. But it's like a small farm town. And as the book progresses, like, it gets turned on its head, essentially. Not that I think the book is necessarily like rural versus city people, but there is an element of like, oh, we had a really quiet, nice life in our town, and all of a sudden, these city people come in and they're changing everything and whatever. I am not very far into this book. I am a few chapters in. I don't know what the horror element of this book is, other than going to an auction. That's as far as I've gotten, okay? I do not know what the horror part is. Could not tell you, okay? But apparently it gets more like there is an eerie feeling to it as you're reading it. Like you're waiting for something to happen. And from what I understand, it gets more insidious, like takes an insidious turn. You feel more uneasy as the book progresses. Like that's how it was described. And it's like, here, read this book. Little like blurb, right? So I don't know. I don't know what's happening in it. I'll keep you updated. I'll let you know next month what my rating is. But so I'm reading that one. That's my like fun book of the month. And then the next book I'm reading is called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's by Bessel van der Kolk. Okay, this is a reread for me. And I hear it recommended a lot. And I heard it recommended a lot even a few years ago. Like, this book has been around for a while. And if you know anything about, like, trauma or mental health, or you've been in therapy for trauma or mental health, like, you have probably come across this book. Even if you have scrolled on TikTok and you follow anybody that talks about trauma or mental health, they have probably recommended this book. So again, it's a reread for me. It's a memory refresher for me. It's relatively easy. I wouldn't say it's one of those self-help books that you sit down to read and it feels like homework necessarily. But I also think that depends on like how interested you are in the topic, which could go for anything. But this in particular, I think you need to have some interest in it, whether it's like a personal interest or professional interest or whatever it is. I think you need to have an interest in it. Otherwise, he's going to lose you when he shows you the 5th brain scan. Like, that's just kind of how it is. That being said, you don't need to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist by any means to read or interpret this book. Let me tell you what it's about. So, Van der Kolk is a psychiatrist. He's like considered the leading researcher, leading like expert when it comes to trauma. Okay. And so this book really chronicles like his research, his experience working with people in trauma, and how different it was in the past versus now. So it's a really good mix of understanding trauma based on not only like his experience, but also on things that we know like for fact from research, right? So my one caution with that is not everybody believes that his ideas are firmly based in research. A lot of things he says he has research to back it up. He can show you where he either performed the study himself, the research himself, or where he got it from. But there are some things that are just his inferences, things that his ideas he's putting forward from his experience that don't necessarily have a research basis to them. They don't necessarily have works that he can pull out and be like, oh, well, and as cited by blank, this is why this works. So that's my caution, is that maybe read it slightly with a grain of salt. Don't take it as gospel. But it is very, very good for anybody who wants a general understanding of trauma. And so I really like it. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I have a background. Not going to get into it, but I really like books like this. They really fascinate me. So that's the other thing I'm reading. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is that, in particular about his work and his book, is that I really appreciate a mental health professional, psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, doesn't matter, who appreciates how the body and the mind work together. I'm not going to bore you with like the biopsychosocial model, but like I think it's really important to understand how healing the body is just as important as healing the mind and vice versa, right? Often those go really hand in hand. And the biopsychosocial model, again, that idea of social, psycho, bio working together, it has picked up a lot of pace recently. Like, it is generally accepted, but I like to see in books that have been put forward into like mainstream media this idea of like, hey, if you're healing your mind, there's probably something going on in the body too that we should talk about. I really like that. Really appreciate that. I like a biological component to trauma. I think it's helpful to people who have experienced trauma to realize that there can be a biological component to it, if that makes sense. Anyway, so those are my 2 books for November. Again, to refresh your memory, I am reading The Auctioneer by Joan Samson, and I'm reading The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Okay, so that's the book of the month. That's generally how it's going to go, is that I'm going to go on a tangent about the books that I read, the books that I'm reading, and you're going to learn more about them than you want to learn, and you might want to read them yourself. I don't know. Maybe you won't. Not my problem. And then we're going to transition to the second half of this episode, which is, I think, can only be described as the yapping portion. This is where I made a list of everything that I thought was important to share, if you will. Starting with what I thought was the most important thing. How do I word this? Okay, so There is a restaurant by my house. It's a local fast food chain, okay? And I cannot tell you the name of it without doxing myself. But what I will tell you is that they promote a dollar soft serve ice cream cone. And the minute I found that out, I was like, I have to have that. I need a dollar soft serve ice cream cone. Specifically, a twist, chocolate and vanilla. Okay? So I found that out a few weeks ago. Okay? And like a week after I found that out, I tried to go on a Sunday. And no, let me back that up, because I actually Googled it to see if they were open on a Sunday. And they are not. Well, the website says they're not. Okay? So I drove past it, going to and from Costco, and they were open. And I was like, oh, well, I don't need a dollar cone right now. I just had a pizza from Costco. But that's good to know. They're open on Sundays. So the week after that, I'm in a complete separate area at a family event, okay? Drive past another one of these restaurants, open. Website says they're all closed. Blew my mind. I was like, they're open. Well, we're getting something else to eat, so I don't need a dollar cone right now. But good to know. That same Sunday, I tried to go to the one by my house, closed. I was like, what is going on? Are they just sometimes open on Sunday? Like, what? So, what day was it? Yesterday? I think yesterday. I was like, okay, let's go on a day where I know they're open. And so we show up, get a dollar cone and a hamburger, and we ask the guy who's working, we're like, okay, so clear this up for me. Are you open on Sundays? And he said, well, we were. And I was like, you were? He was like, well, yeah. Those were our summer hours. And I went, what? And he's like, yeah, now we're in our winter hours. And I was like, okay. And he was like, yeah, so now we close the lobby at 8 and the restaurant closes at 9. And I was like, okay, and we're not open at Sundays. And I went, okay. I did not know restaurants did summer and winter hours. I have never... Now, I've heard of like stores doing summer and winter hours, right? Depending on what they are. But why are they able to be open on Sundays in the summer, but not in the winter? So we were talking about this, and I was like, I don't know. But we came to the conclusion that maybe like people buy more ice cream in the summer so they can stay open on Sundays because they know people are going to want to stop in on Sundays in the summer, even though it's a Sunday. I don't know. The point of the story, though, is that I did get a dollar ice cream cone, and it was really good. So, but I can't get them on Sundays, which I am really confused about. But in the summer, I can. So whenever they start their summer hours, then I can get a dollar ice cream cone on Sundays, if they're still doing a dollar ice cream cone. Anyway, that's the big news from my week. The other big news is that I saw a TikTok earlier today about a woman that was like, she's like, I have no sympathy, and I wish I could find it because I didn't save it, but it was really funny. She was like, I wish I could have empathy for people who climb mountains. I was like, okay, I'm locked in. What do you mean by that? And she was like, if you climb a mountain and you're putting yourself in like, you know, knocking on death's door essentially of your own volition, why are we doing that? Like, why are we allowed to just climb mountains? Like, why is that just socially acceptable, you know? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm with you actually, because why is that socially acceptable? Same with like spelunking, because who said it was okay to just crawl around in tiny caves and die down there? Like, why is that just socially acceptable? I think I'm also just like weirdly fascinated by self-inflicted I don't want to say self-inflicted death or tragedy because that sounds terrible, but that's essentially what I'm getting at. Like, the concept of you're hiking Mount Everest, and in order to hike Mount Everest, you have to walk past all the other bodies of people who died climbing Mount Everest. Like, at that point, that's crazy. And so that's what other people were saying in the comments too. Like, again, if you're walking past all these dead bodies, people who've already died, why are you doing it? Same with like spelunking. Again, like, you already know there's a body trapped down there and they're dead and you're just going to go spelunking? Or like, you already know 10 people have died scuba diving in this lake, but you're just going to do it anyway? That's crazy to me. That's crazy. Anyway. Speaking of TikToks, there's one brand of TikTok that I think is rather niche. I don't think everybody gets these TikToks. But it's the TikToks of, like, it's a bunch of cats, and a bunch of different cat pictures, and it starts like, I don't know how to explain this. It sounds so stupid. Okay. It always starts like, try not to get scared. Scariest stories. And then it says something like, it's like, I was never afraid before. That is, until I met Larry. And that's the end of the video. And it's brain rot to its fullest. Like, it is the most brain rot thing I've ever laid eyes on. But I watch every single one. It's so funny to me. And probably like 2 or 3 times a day, I say the words, little did I know it would be a feature. A creature feature. Featuring the creature. Because that's one of the ones that I saw. And it's just like stuck in my head. And it's so funny. And I don't know why. I think maybe it's just because like my attention span is so short, like I was talking about earlier, that when I get a video that's just pure brain rot and it's 10 seconds long, I'm like, perfect. My brain eats that up. Little did I know it would be a feature. A creature feature. Featuring the creature. That shit just cracks me up. I think it's so funny and I don't know why. Anyway. Also, there are like, I like legitimately probably need to do something about my attention span. Like, there are actual research studies coming out right now about how TikTok is designed to ruin your attention span. And that is crazy. Like, the amount of power people have with technology like that is crazy. I'll give you another example. And this is kind of a leap of an example. It's kind of like a major example. But the robots that Elon Musk made, the like AI robots, they scare me so bad. And you know what? I don't even care if when they take over the world they see this and they kill me for it, because they are so unnatural. And I feel like they just scare me so bad. Maybe it's just because, like, I played Detroit Become Human. I've seen iRobot. That is crazy. Humans, like, should not be in possession of that much technology, I don't think. Like, that advanced of technology, I don't feel like we should possess that. Like, I feel like our technology is advancing so much faster than we are prepared to handle it. Especially, like, AI in particular is absolutely insane. Like, I feel like we are really reaching a point where, like, eventually we will not be able to discern, like, what is AI and what is real. And that is so terrifying. Like, the thought of that is so damn scary to me. And if I saw one of those AI robots in the street, I'd drop kick that motherfucker, because that is absolutely not. They scare me so bad. Do you guys remember Sophia the robot? I'll put a little picture in here because... Okay, Sophia the robot is so uncanny valley. She freaks me out. Like, she freaks me out so bad. Anyway. Okay, so those are my thoughts on TikTok and also on AI. I will definitely have more thoughts on TikTok, though. I'm chronically online. But speaking of being on TikTok, I came across a thing today that blew my mind. Like, jaw on the floor, like legitimately the best thing I have found on TikTok so far. It was a cover of Get Low by T-Pain, Mark Zuckerberg, and Z-Pain, who is Mark Zuckerberg, by the way. He dubbed himself for this Z-Pain. But if you look at the credits, it says T-Pain, Mark Zuckerberg, and Z-Pain. What a crazy experience that was. First of all, an acoustic version of Get Low is crazy. Like, that's so insane. But it also slaps. Like, it's so good. And maybe it's just because I'm a big fan of T-Pain, that anything T-Pain does, I'm like, yeah, great, love that. But something about Get Low featuring T-Pain by Z-Pain, who was Mark Zuckerberg, blows my mind. And it's so good. It's like legitimately listenable. It is in my liked songs on Spotify. I don't know what that says about me as a person. It is in my liked songs on Spotify. That is the truth. And I have listened to it since I discovered it at 1:30 p.m. I have listened to it probably 5 or 6 times. I'm low-key obsessed with it. And I think the story behind it is even better. So I didn't do that much of a deep dive, but what I did find out is that apparently it's the song that was playing when Mark Zuckerberg met his wife. Okay, cute. That's so cute. Wild that it was Get Low and he made an acoustic version of it, but that's besides the point. I've also seen a lot of people saying, well, that's what you're supposed to do with billionaire money. If you have that kind of money and you're not collabing with T-Pain to make an acoustic version of Get Low for your wife because it's the song that was playing when you met, what are you even doing? Like, that is such a good use of power and money. Like, that's when you have fun money. Like, that is actual fun money. And also, I have not seen Zark. I have not seen Mark Zuckerberg in a minute, okay? Z-Pain, if you will. I did not know what he looked like. He looks so different on the cover art. Like, he looks so different. And I think, whenever I think Mark Zuckerberg, whenever I think about Z-Pain, I think about the live stream he did where he was, like, smoking brisket or whatever with his friends. And he's like, we're just smoking meats. Just a couple of guys, a couple of dudes smoking meats. Nothing better than smoking meats. And then at one point, he's like, gotta have that Sweet Baby Ray's. And then it just, like, repeated, Sweet Baby Ray's, Sweet Baby Ray's. And we quote that all the time in this household, by the way. Smoking that meat gets said all the time. Anyway, I have to end with that because, I love T-Pain. I did see T-Pain and Pitbull in concert, and T-Pain was better. He was the better part of that concert. We didn't even make it. Don't come for me, Pitbull stands. We probably didn't even make it like 15 minutes into Pitbull's set before we left because T-Pain was so good. And then Pitbull was kind of a disappointment after that. But that might just, again, that's a bias because I love T-Pain, obviously. But there are so many things about this that are so funny. Of all the people, Mark Zuckerberg, the last person I would have guessed. Get Low, acoustic version. It's so funny. Like, please, someone dance to it at their wedding because it's like, it's perfect. It's so good. Please listen to it. And also, if you have time, go look up the live stream of Mark Zuckerberg going, smoking these meats, just smoking these meats, because that is also legitimately funny. Man, I'm just, sorry, I have to talk about it, though, because if my husband were like, hey, I was in the studio with T-Pain, and we made an acoustic version of Apple Bottom Jeans, I'd be like, damn, we gotta get remarried so we can dance to it. Like, that's gotta be our first dance, because that's crazy. That's so good, and I love it. And what a tribute. I hope she's like as excited about it as I'm excited about it, or I would be excited about it. Also, I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg, I can Google this to double check, but I'm like 90% sure Mark Zuckerberg created a statue. Like he like had a statue made, commissioned a statue to be made of his wife. Man is just like, he got money and immediately was like, what can I do for my wife? And it was by like her favorite artist or whatever. He's kind of, honestly, he's done a lot to like rebuild his image. And he's kind of done a really good job, I fear. Anyway, I just felt like I found that out and everyone had to know. It's so fucking funny. It's so funny to me. Please go listen to it. Please go watch the live stream. It's really, really old, but it is Mark Zuckerberg smoking meats. And that is also really funny. Even if you just watch a compilation of him saying smoking these meats, it gets a chuckle. It's really funny. I'll probably put a clip of it somewhere because it is funny. Okay, anyway, see you next week. That's all I have to say. Bye.